about fall, and we were talking about all these new things starting, football, our activities, and I think when new things start and there's all these new beginnings, it can be kind of overwhelming, and so we wanted to talk a little bit about it. Randy, you'd start us out talking about how to deal with that overwhelm.
Yeah. Well, I think the cool thing about this is in our lives, while we feel sometimes like all these things in our life are overwhelming, I really go back to, and this is something that I've said before, is that we get to choose how we're going to be in those situations. And a lot of times we feel like our environment causes us to be that way and feel overwhelmed. But the reality is we can have our schedule so scheduled out where it's like we can't even take a breath, or I can't eat lunch, or I can't, or oh my gosh, I'm running. And while that is true, now we're mindful in those situations. How can we be mindful of, okay, now I feel overwhelmed and what can I do? And I think sometimes we celebrate or we don't celebrate how we actually do in those situations. We actually feel sometimes like I'm so overwhelmed, but it's like, oh my gosh, I really did all this stuff today, and that feels fantastic that I did that. It's sometimes it's like, oh my gosh, I did all this, and I'm just so tired, I'm exhausted. Mm-hmm. So I think sometimes we kind of have to put the shoe on the other foot and really kind of take a step back and go, wow, I felt overwhelmed, but I did all this stuff. And so I think being able to think about it yourself, and sometimes and again, really being able to manage all the stresses of our world, sometimes how do we kind of take that and go, okay, well, I felt overwhelmed today, but I did this and I did that. So I think right now, kind of feeling overwhelmed might be, hopefully things go well in these things that I do. And so having said that, sometimes really just accepting that you feel overwhelmed and things may go well or they may not go so well, but they're going to go. And I think that they're going to go in whatever way. And then really just being able to take a step back and yourself be like, I'm going to get through them. I know Mondays are always one of those times where we've got all this stuff, these to-dos on our list, and I got to get all these done. And Mondays can maybe feel more overwhelming than a Friday, because a Friday is like, oh, okay, now I get time to kind of sit back. Well, I don't know. Sometimes Fridays going into the weekend for some families might feel overwhelming too. But I think just taking a step back and thinking about that we all have things in our life that we do, and we get to manage how those things are in our lives is a good feeling. So, yeah.
And I like both reflecting on how I've done and how far I've come, and also reminding myself of the purpose of where I'm going and the reason that I'm taking all of these steps to get there. So having a balance of looking back, reflecting on the have-dones and the to-dos and the purpose of it all.
Yeah.
The to-dos sometimes can outweigh the dones, right?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, they can outdo that. And if we just kind of think back and go, I'm putting these into my life, right? Like we were talking earlier, we were talking about like Mondays, getting up and saying, I got out of bed and I got to go to work today. That can feel a little overwhelming, but the opposite is true too. Like it would feel overwhelming if we didn't have work and we stayed in bed. It could feel overwhelming. And so remember, we get to put these things in our lives.